Dear humans, I stand here today not for myself, but for every tail wagger, sloppy kisser, and curtain ninja. I stand here for each one of the thousands of dogs and cats killed in shelters each day, asking you to join our cause and help us make sure every best friend has a chance to meet one of their own. With Best Friends Animal Society leading the charge, and your help, we can save them all.
Thank you for joining us for Pet Connect. I'm Tara Douglas. We're going to get right to my special guest today, because who better to talk about the shelter than the shelter manager and the assistant manager today. So Stephanie Engel and Trish Smith, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
So it's really cold outside right now. So I really wanted both of you on the show to talk about what needs to happen in cold weather with people in the community and their dogs and their cats and everybody we need to worry about right now with it so cold.
Yeah. So first of all, with the temperatures being as cold as they have been, it's really important for everybody to think of your pet cat or your pet dog as a family member. You would not have your family member outside in cotton pajamas in this kind of weather, and same thing with the dog. So if cold tolerance for animals is based on things like the coat thickness, if they have good body fat storage, activity level, and also if there's like pre-existing health conditions, so if they have anything like diabetes, renal failure, if there's any history like Cushing's disease, which is a hormonal thing, they can't regulate their body temperature, so that puts them at greater risk. If they're longer coated, or if they're a short dog and there's any kind of snow or ice, and they can end up with frostbite. So the tail, the paws, belly, ears, and nose are the areas that you need to watch. If they are a longer coated dog and they've got like fur between their pads and their paws, you need to trim that or think about doing that if you're in an area that's icy or you get snow, because it'll hold clumps of snow and then they can get frostbite.
Okay. I mean, you think about the dogs with the longer fur as being designed to be out in the cold, but there's still lots of issues you have to think about there.
You do, yeah. So what we've tried to do these past few days is bring as many dogs that we felt would not withstand the exposure indoors. So I'll let Trish talk about that, because that has been a huge job.
And you have how many dogs at the shelter right now, roughly?
About 125.
Okay, and so that's a big deal. For those of you who haven't been out to the shelter, of course there are the indoor kennels, but they've got outdoor space for dogs, just so you can house this many dogs. Yeah. So Trish, tell us what has to happen when it gets this cold with all of those dogs.
So there's about 25 dogs outside right now. All we do is we just bring in the crates, or bring in the dogs, put them in the black crates, with a bowl of water, newspaper, blanket. So we just have to bring them all inside, set up a bunch of crates. So it just requires like at least an hour and a half just bringing the dogs in and out. And then you got to think cleaning up and setting all the crates up. So it's a lot of extra work, but it's fine. They need to stay warm.
And you bring them in at night?
Yeah,
so
we let them play during the day, because
they
don't really mind like running around when the sun's out. And so it gets them, because they're in a little bitty crate all night. So.
Okay. And so that's good to know. I thought maybe when it got really cold you'd have to bring them in the whole day, but they still get to go out and run around and have a good time.
Fun.
Yeah. No, we monitor that, because if it's super cold and like with the wind chill, if there's high wind and the temperatures drop, then we do, we'll put them outside, we'll do a couple of rows, bring that group in, try to get another group out, so alternate.
Then also when they're outside, they are able to go into the doghouse that has a bunch of dry hay. And the thing is, it has to be dry, and we always put fresh, change it out often, and that way they have a way to get out of the elements.
And with the dog houses and the dry hay, we've got to think about that with our own dogs at home. So, of course, ideally you'd bring your dog in if you, or your cat, but I guess there's some places and some situations where people can't do that. So you got to have that dry situation for them. Got to have some cover and some heat source if we can.
Right.
But let's talk about what happens, if you don't mind, if you notice that somebody is not taking care of their animals in this really extreme cold? What needs to happen through, what are the proper channels? What should people do?
So if you see an animal that does not have adequate shelter or food or water, or you see an animal outside and it's just chained, to a stake, to a tree, and it's shivering, please call the shelter at 256-391-4142, and I will alert our animal control officer, and he will go and talk to those pet owners and let them know that that's not allowed per city and state mandates, and that they need to provide one adequate shelter. It's got to be sturdy to protect against wind and cold, if possible elevated off the ground so
Okay.
we don't lose heat
Okay.
through the ground. And some sort of, like wheat straws, great big heavy layers of wheat straw inside is what most people use. Blankets aren't ideal because if the dog is out in snow or rain or whatever and they go in, then those blankets get wet and they freeze. So actually the wheat straw is what everybody prefers.
Okay. So if you do report to animal control, or if animal control sees it himself, then he contacts the owner and lets
Yes.
them know that they have to fix that. Then what
Yes.
kind of time frame do they have? What happens next?
So what happened recently with an incident here in Sylacauga is, somebody called in and there were 5 dogs left out. One of them was chained to a picket fence. The others did not have adequate shelter. He went and spoke to the owners. They were given several hours to try to, attempt to show that they were doing something to provide shelter or to bring the dogs in. That didn't happen. There was a second call. Police got involved, so then those animals were brought to us.
Okay.
They were given an outdoor kennel so they could all stay together. We gave them insulated dog houses with, overhead protection, as well as the dog house and wheat straw.
Okay.
So that's what happened. And then the owner will have to, make the necessary steps to reclaim the dog. So, the housing or the shelter needs to be in place. They have to come fill out, a form, and they just have to meet whatever voids, I'll say, that they don't have. If the dog doesn't have a rabies tag, they have to, provide proof that they've paid for one. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and then they get their dog back.
Okay. Now, is it ever appropriate to call dispatch or anything like that if you see that? Is it just a situation where you want everyone to call the shelter only if they need animal control?
So if a resident lives in the county, you call the dispatch number.
Okay.
And they will coordinate with local authorities, and
Okay.
they will eventually reach out to us if they need assistance.
Okay.
If you're within the city limits of Sylacauga or a short radius around it, then you go ahead and call the shelter number.
Okay.
And we'll be happy to dispatch our ACO, who is Doug Nixon, to you.
Okay. So there are things that can happen for people outside the city limits that
Yes.
are in the county.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Now, another thing with calling the shelter, y'all are busy. You have 125 dogs. You have cats. You
Yeah.
have all kinds of things. So you aren't always right there by the phone.
Right.
So just urge people to leave the message, and you're checking really
Yes.
frequently, and you'll know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
check it all day,
Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
just that new number that a lot of people don't have.
Okay. And what's that number again?
It's 256-391-4142, and everybody needs to know that first thing in the morning, everybody is on the floor. It's all hands on deck to get those animals fed, watered, and cleaned,
Yeah.
and rotated in and out. So we don't start really checking the phones until about 10 a.m.,
Okay.
but we do check and return messages.
Okay, that's perfect. Because I have had people say that they called and they're not leaving messages. I'm like, you've got to leave them a message, or they don't know, they can't call you back.
Yeah.
Now, you had an incident. I'd like to discuss it. It's not a great thing to talk about, but 2 nights ago, you had somebody leave some puppies at the shelter. So let's talk about that and talk about how important it is that that doesn't happen. We can't have that happen. So,
Yeah, so about 2 nights ago,
and we got a picture up of the situation right there.
Yeah.
Douglas came in, and he was the one that alerted us and let us know that the puppies were outside in a box. So we went out there, we grabbed the puppies, and then a few minutes later, he came in, because that's when he saw them, was when he went out there to clean. The puppies, they weren't even in front of a door or anything. But he found one deceased in the kennel because the dog had, I guess, bit at the box and grabbed it.
Okay.
it was right underneath. We try to like label and say like had a sign vicious dogs, but we do have to keep even vicious dogs for a certain amount of time by the law, by law. So that's why the dog was still there. We don't adopt out the vicious dogs, but
And that's important to note, because I noticed on
Yeah.
that post that you made about
Yeah.
somebody dumping the dog, that the shelter, and I'll have people say that they're scared to adopt a shelter dog, but all of the dogs that are available for adoption are sweet. I mean, we walk
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dogs every Saturday, and
Right.
they're happy, sweet dogs that deserve a good home. But as Trish was saying, there are laws to where you can't. I mean, if you have a vicious dog, it's not going to be adopted
Right.
out, but you've got to keep it there.
Right.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's an issue that I wanted people to understand.
Yeah,
number
people,
one.
people
But-
need to know that, by law, we're mandated to hang on to a dog for at least 7 days. If there is suspected rabies, it's 10 days. Normally, what we try to do, if it's a crazy vicious dog, and we have had several come in that have attacked people, those dogs, I prefer to stay or to board with a vet so they can be observed, monitored, and tested for rabies. And if they do suspect, rabies, the dog is euthanized and then tested down in Auburn for that. But it is mandatory. So that's why we do have to have, I prefer to have outdoor spaces for these animals so we don't risk staff, getting hurt. The other thing is that in this particular case that you're bringing up, we always post, in this case it was extremely vicious dogs do not approach. The person who dropped these puppies off put them directly in front of the kennel gate of both of these vicious dogs. The dog managed to chew a hole through the corner and pull one of the puppies through and killed it. It was a real mess for us yesterday morning.
I imagine so.
A real
so,
mess.
So not only did
So,
somebody leave some puppies in this really cold weather in a cardboard box with nothing in it,
Nothing in it.
nothing to insulate them,
Nope.
but they put it right next to a vicious dog kennel.
Right.
So it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the shelter is full. There is no space. That's why we really need everyone to start spaying and neutering. We can't have all these dogs around here. There's nothing you can do with them. I mean, luckily we had a wonderful volunteer that offered to take those puppies and foster them, but the shelter has no space, especially if you're bringing dogs in at night right now because it's so cold. You
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have anywhere to put puppies.
Yeah,
Right.
and thank you, Tara, for bringing that up because I want everybody to know that when we tell you we're at capacity or we don't have space, we're not saying that,
Right.
just to thwart you or not to be helpful to you. But we're saying that because we really don't have the space. And as everyone knows, we are extremely short-staffed. There are 2 or 3 of us there to manage 125 up to 170 animals. I can't tell you how much work is involved in that. And then we have 1 ACO officer for a huge area. So we are running from the moment we get there until we leave at night. So it's not that we're trying to, be rude or not helpful. It's that we seriously don't have space. And I need everybody to think about, the issues you create for us when you do things like this.
Absolutely. And then how rough it is on you. You're already taking care of all these dogs. It's a stressful situation at a
It
shelter,
is.
regardless. And then you have puppies dumped, you have one that gets killed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be really hard on you as shelter workers and caring for these animals and loving these animals to have something like that happen.
We've had other litters of puppies just dumped in the carport that had parvo.
Mixed in with puppies that have already been vaccinated and that we were, and
Trying
they
to
just mixed
rehome.
them.
So, I mean, when we have situations like that, now all of a sudden, you've exposed healthy animals, healthy puppies to parvo. And people outside the shelter don't understand, I don't think for the most part, how much time it takes when you have to medicate a single animal times maybe 30 because now we've got several litters exposed.
Yeah.
So now we're having to take, Trish, how much time does it take? I mean, we're
It takes
having
a lot of time because you want to change your gloves, you have to wash your hands, sometimes you have to
Smock.
put on like a smock suit. And then it's just at risk because then if I have to go take care of a sick puppy and there's only 2 or 3 of us there, I have no choice but to go take
Yeah.
care of a healthy puppy.
Yeah.
right after that and do
And
that
the
back and
cleaning
forth.
protocol changes, and then we're cleaning constantly, and people don't understand sort of the domino effect of this.
And the most stressful part is watching a puppy or a dog die of parvo is absolutely horrifying. Like
it is.
it's terrible, and it's just that's
Well, we certainly appreciate everything that you do at the shelter. We appreciate having a shelter in the
Yeah.
city, and we know it's hard work that y'all do, and I would like the community to know what kind of hard work you
Yeah.
have. This is not an easy job you do, but we appreciate it quite
Thank
a
you.
bit.
Thank you.
Now, before we go, if we have just a minute, I hope we do, let's talk real quick about the pet of the week. Let's talk about something happy before we go.
Okay.
So Trish, tell us about Otis.
Otis, he's like the happiest dog at the shelter. He's, oh, there he is. He has a little nub tail. He's high energy. He's a mixed breed. He's about 1 to 2 years old. He loves other dogs. He plays really rough though. So if you have a laid back dog, then maybe he's not the right fit for you. But if
Okay.
you have like a hyper dog or, a busy family, like he's high energy, I think he would do well in the mix.
Well, I say this a lot, but he's definitely one of the shelter walkers' favorites. So please help us find Otis a home, and please come out and join us for walking dogs on Saturdays from 11 to 1. And you can meet Otis yourself. So we'll be out there this Saturday. It might be a little cold, but we plan on being there and getting those dogs out the best we can and having a good time. So, and anyone that wants to join us, come on out. And if you have any questions, you can message the shelter. You can message Feral Dogs of Avondale Mill. We'll answer the best we can or refer you to the shelter. And come out and we'll see you this Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us for Pet Connect, and there'll be more Daybreak after these messages.
Dear humans, I stand here today not for myself, but for every tail wagger, sloppy kisser, and curtain ninja. I stand here for each one of the thousands of dogs and cats killed in shelters each day, asking you to join our cause and help us make sure every best friend has a chance to meet one of their own. With Best Friends Animal Society leading the charge and your help, we can save them all.